Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so our mission for you today is to really try and cut through, well, decades of fog using source material that details this whole quest for UAP disclosure.
Exactly. And it's not just about seeing strange lights. These sources lay out a case for a huge systemic structure.
Built for secrecy, right? And not just keeping secrets, but actively, muddying the waters with disinformation for 70 years.
That's the core assertion we're exploring. A massive, ongoing disinformation campaign by the U.S. government, possibly working with private companies, to basically sow confusion about UAPs.
It seems almost paradoxical, though. I mean, why? Why lie so actively about something potentially seen by millions all over the world? That's the big question these sources tackle.
It really is. What could possibly justify that level of, deception?
So let's start where the sources do, looking back. They try to connect this modern phenomenon to, well, much older accounts. Makes it feel less out of nowhere.
Right, like this one congressman mentioned in the materials. When he first got interested, he actually referenced the Bible.
The Bible? Seriously? Which part?
The book of Ezekiel, specifically. The famous wheel within a wheel description.
Ah, okay. I've heard that connection made before.
Yeah, and the point the sources make is how surprisingly, maybe even technically descriptive that ancient language sounds when you compare it to modern reports. Think flying saucers, landing gear.
So the idea is whatever this is, it's not new. It's been around.
That's the framework they build. Now, fast forward to more recent documented sightings, things get pretty intense.
Like the civilian accounts. I saw one mentioned from the 70s.
Yeah, this woman describes as kind of old money, classy. She was in college with a brother, and they apparently saw this cylindrical object, lit up, bluish tint.
Did it just fly by?
No, that's the thing. It apparently followed them for several minutes. Creepy stuff.
Definitely. But the military encounters seem even more significant, right? National security implications.
Hugely significant. There's this account from a former state legislator, a Navy vet. He talks about something back in the late 1950s.
Okay, what did he see?
He described a cylindrical object, huge, maybe 2 city blocks wide, flying totally silently over a ship.
Silently?
Yeah, his words were, no noise, no heat, no vapor. And this wasn't just any ship. It was involved in unloading a nuclear missile for a submarine.
Wow. Okay, that's a direct challenge, flying over a nuclear asset like that.
You'd think alarms bells investigations.
Absolutely. What happened?
Total opposite, according to the report. Immediate cover-up. And threats.
Threats against Navy personnel.
Yep. They were told, basically, keep your mouth shut or you'll be busting rocks for the rest of your life. That's the quote.
So intimidation from the start, that sets a tone.
It really does. The sources argue that this is the foundation, fear over truth, right from the beginning.
But, okay, why the assumption it's non-human? Couldn't it be, I don't know, super secret tech from another country? Or even our own?
That's what the contact cited in the sources push back against pretty hard. Their logic goes like this. If it was Russia...
Putin would be bragging about it nonstop, especially now.
Exactly. Show of force. If it was China...
We'd probably know in other ways. Geopolitically, economically.
Right. One source put it bluntly. They would own us. And if it was U.S. tech...
We'd be showing it off, right, on aircraft carriers, demanding bigger budgets.
Precisely. So the consensus among these informed individuals, the ones talking in the source material, is basically... No way is this our technology. It just breaks the rules of known physics.
Okay, so if it's not ours, not Russia's, not China's, and the military is actively suppressing sightings, what's the real motive here, according to these sources? It has to be powerful.
Oh, definitely. The analysis in the material boils it down to 4 main drivers behind the secrecy, at least according to the people pushing for disclosure.
4 drivers? What are they?
They list arrogance, control, monetary greed, and industry preservation.
Let's unpack those a bit. Arrogance and control seem almost psychological.
Yeah, arrogance is like the system can't admit it was wrong or didn't know something for, 70 years. Can't admit they aren't top dog.
And control.
That's the fear of societal upheaval. What happens to religion, politics, social order if everyone knows we're not alone? Or that there's technology out there that completely changes the game?
But the sources seem to put more weight on the other two. Money and industry.
Overwhelmingly, yes. Monetary greed and industry preservation seem to be the real engines driving this, based on the claims.
So the financial threat of disclosure, how big are we talking?
Potentially world-changing,
Yeah.
existential even. The sources float scenarios like this. Imagine disclosing technology that provides essentially free energy.
Like heating homes in winter, cooling them in summer, no fuel needed.
Exactly. Think what that does instantly. It wipes out huge industries. Oil and gas, gone. Power generation, transformed. And think about the defense sector.
Ah, the war pimps at the Pentagon, as one source rather colorfully put it.
Yeah, that kind of language is used. The idea is that industries profiting from current energy tech or from conventional conflict have a massive vested interest in keeping superior, potentially disruptive tech under wraps.
Which leads straight to this idea of a defense contractor corporate connection. How are private companies supposedly involved in hiding this?
Well, the belief outlined in the sources, coming from whistleblowers and insiders, is that a handful of specific corporations, maybe 5 or 6, actually possess retrieved non-human technology.
Corporations, not the government directly.
Quasi-governmental ones. Companies with deep security clearances operating in this gray zone. They get contracts, they do the research, but they're technically private.
And the link to politics.
The sources point out that politicians, particularly those who block or water down disclosure bills, often have financial ties, investments, lobbying connections to exactly these kinds of companies, major tech, aerospace, missile defense contractors. Raytheon gets mentioned as an example.
So the structure itself protects the secret. How does compartmentalization play into this?
It's key. It's the systemic shield. Information is broken up into tiny pieces. It's handed off to these private contractors. So even if a Congress member really wants to find the truth,
They hit a dead end.
exactly. They can't find the original material. They don't even know who really has control. And places like Area 51. The sources claim they get cleaned out before any official inspection.
And you can't just FOIA these private
No.
companies.
Nope. They dismiss the requests. It's proprietary corporate information, they say, or it falls under national security classification tied to their government contracts. It's a perfect loophole, really. Protects profits and the secret.
It sounds incredibly frustrating for lawmakers trying to get answers. The sources describe Washington, D.C. itself as part of the problem, like a system designed to resist this kind of truth.
Yeah, one contact called it a sewer, basically.
Yeah.
Talking about how money compromises the whole process. The resistance is baked in.
You saw the public interest, though, that congressional hearing on UAPs?
Huge interest. Reporters apparently said it was the most attended hearing they'd ever seen. People clearly want to know.
But that interest didn't translate into straightforward action, did it? The sources contrast two different bills.
Right. There was one, very simple, just 2 pages, put forward by a congressman basically saying, release everything, now unredacted.
Okay, simple enough. What was the other one?
That was the big Schumer bill. Highly publicized, lots of fanfare. But the critics cited in our sources were immediately suspicious.
Why? What was wrong with it?
Well, it was incredibly long and complex, hundreds of pages. And its structure, setting up a review commission. It reminded critics of the Warren Commission.
The one that investigated the JFK assassination, which many people feel didn't tell the whole story.
Exactly that parallel. The fear was that this new commission, like the Warren Commission, was designed not for transparency, but to control the narrative, delay things, filter the information, and ultimately bury the most sensitive parts. A mechanism for managed disclosure, at best.
And this connects back to the broader issue of money influencing policy. The sources use insider trading in Congress as a prime example.
They do. It's presented as a symptom of the systemic corruption that allows secrecy to thrive. They detail alleged cases where members of Congress made huge returns, like 500, 600%,
How?
on stock trades made sometimes just weeks before big government announcements. Like knowing about contracts to refill missile stocks being sent to Ukraine, for example, and investing accordingly.
That sounds, well, deeply problematic if true.
It's presented as evidence that financial self-interest often overrides public duty, and it shows the power certain industries, like defense, hold.
And didn't they try to ban stock trading for Congress members?
They did. A bipartisan bill was proposed, but according to the sources, it failed.
Why did it fail?
The leadership argument, as quoted in the material, was astonishing. Essentially that members can't afford to serve in Congress without being able to trade stocks.
Wow. So that's the attitude.
Then, the sources argue, how can you expect that same system to willingly reveal a truth that could disrupt trillion-dollar industries and fundamentally shift global power? It seems designed to protect the status quo, including its own financial perks.
So with that kind of resistance, how do they keep people quiet? The sources talk about disinformation campaigns.
Absolutely. If the system won't yield, you have to neutralize those pushing against it. The main tactics mentioned are designed to shame people and deploy distractions.
Distractions like white flags, what does that mean?
White flags are described as deliberately leaked false information. Think fake data, maybe a doctored photo, a misleading testimony.
What's the goal?
To send genuine investigators, journalists, even whistleblowers down a dead end. Waste their time, waste their resources. Then when the lead turns out to be false, it discredits the entire investigation and the person pursuing it. It's calculated misdirection.
And if that doesn't work, does it get personal?
According to the sources, yes, it can get very ugly. They give a specific, pretty shocking example concerning a military whistleblower.
What happened to him?
His private medical records, including a past PTSD diagnosis, were allegedly leaked illegally to a newspaper.
To destroy his credibility.
Exactly. Weaponizing mental health against a veteran who dared to speak out. The sources paint a picture of Washington as a system that protects itself ruthlessly. If you step out of line, especially with something this sensitive, they'll try to crush you.
It's chilling. Let's circle back to the reason this is all so sensitive, the nature of the technology itself, the physical evidence.
Right, because that's what makes the cover-up seem necessary to those enforcing it. The military accounts are still the most compelling on this front.
You mentioned underwater objects earlier, USOs.
Unidentified submerged objects, yeah.
Yep.
High-ranking Navy sources describe seeing things like a football field-sized object moving underwater at 200 miles per hour.
200 mile underwater.
What's our fastest sub?
Maybe high 30s mile fear, tops. So that speed difference alone is it's evidence of something completely outside our known capabilities.
And in the air, the G-forces. That's the other big physical constraint. Scientific testimony cited confirms these craft make maneuvers, instant stops, right-angle turns at incredible speed that generate jet forces far beyond human tolerance.
What would happen to a human pilot?
The phrase used by one witness was pretty graphic. They'd be turned into a ketchup package. It's just impossible with our biology, let alone our current tech. Materials, science, propulsion. Nothing we have explains it.
So where do these things come from? Still space? Or are there other ideas?
The thinking is evolving, according to the sources. Deep space is still on the table, obviously. But because they seem to be around so consistently, and maybe have been for a long time.
Like the Ezekiel connection suggests.
Kind of. Some contacts are now theorizing they might not be visitors in the typical sense. Maybe they've been here for thousands of years.
Here? Where?
Potentially based in places we barely explore, like the really deep parts of our oceans. It's vast, it's mostly unmonitored. It's plausible concealment, if you think about it.
The political takeaway from all this seems pretty bleak. People with real information are actually afraid of the U.S. government.
They fear Washington, D.C. They fear Congress. The sources say whistleblowers refuse to meet at the Capitol. They insist on secure remote locations because they see the system itself as corrupt and dangerous. They believe it will destroy them if they reveal too much. So when you look at the big picture presented in these sources, this whole UAP disclosure fight, it's almost a symptom of something bigger.
Bigger than just aliens or strange craft.
Yeah. It's framed as a battle against institutional arrogance, against deep-seated financial corruption, and this almost knee-jerk impulse for secrecy and deceit within powerful systems.
And it's not just UAPs, they argue.
No. They draw direct lines to other long-standing secrets. Think about the JFK assassination files, still not fully released after decades, or questions around 9/11 intelligence failures. It's the same pattern, they argue. The system protects itself, admits nothing.
So for you listening, what's the path forward? If Congress is compromised and the system resists, how does the truth ever come out?
The sources are pretty blunt, almost cynical, about the prospects through normal channels. They suggest real disclosure might only happen one of two ways.
Okay, what are they?
One, a truly powerful figure, like a sitting president, just decides to bypass the entire structure and order full, immediate transparency. Cuts the Gordian knot, basically.
And the other way?
Is maybe more dramatic. Someone with access, maybe working in one of these private labs, walks out with undeniable proof, physical material, crystal clear data, and gets it onto the internet globally before the system can stop them.
Before they get silenced? Or worse? The sources use stark language about that possibility.
They did. Accused of committing suicide was the phrase used, highlighting the perceived danger.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you to consider, based on everything we've discussed from these sources. If digging into UAPs, something often pushed to the fringe, reveals such a clear picture of alleged systemic corruption, where corporate money and secrecy seem to override public interest, What does that suggest? What other issues out there, maybe things currently labeled conspiracy theories or dismissed as nonsense, might actually be important signals? Could they also be windows into similar patterns of hidden influence and systemic rot protecting powerful private interests? Something to think about.